was just like overbearing, and she's like, you have to marry an adult man. So that's all she can think of. I don't like how she blew him off, and I think that he was more sensitive. It's kind of like a role reversal because when you read about one night stands, you hear the guy is like, you can leave now, and the girl is like trying to cuddle, but he cuddled her, and he wanted her to stay. And then she gets up and leaves and ghosts him, and he's like, well, damn, I thought we had a good time.
Yeah,
right.
So,
and she addresses that a little later when she explains why she had to leave. And it's almost like this sense of, like, didn't it almost feel like when she had that one night stand, liking him was the bigger crime? Like, it was a bigger crime that she liked him than it was that she had done this. Like, that was the big crime. So now this book, I don't want to say hinges on, because I never feel like it's real, but there's this not playful. There's an aspect of it almost being a love triangle. We have this ex that comes back to town who is now a doctor, that the mother is like, this is the perfect guy. And we know that she lost her virginity to this guy at Bible camp. Right after, I think it was right after her mother's talk on abstinence. So she loses her virginity to this guy, and then he never calls her again. Like, for a month, she doesn't hear from him. The next day at the camp, he's gone. And she doesn't hear from him for, like, over a month afterwards. And then this guy comes back into her life after she finally gets involved with Rafael. And to this moment, I am still struggling to figure out the motive behind this character. Because our character is pregnant. It becomes known that she is pregnant in a almost farcical aspect when she is sick as a dog after spending the night with the hero, Rafael, and he asks her through the bathroom door what her mother's address is, and she's so not thinking, she gives it to him. And she gets a call from her mother saying, who is this white man mowing my lawn? And she, like, gets out of bed and goes flying to her mother's house. Sierra, I see it on your face. What do you want to say?
Well, so there's a couple of things I want to set the stage for. So, one, so you have Azere and her sister Efe and her mom. And when her dad died, his brother took over the responsibility of, seeing to the care and feeding of the mom and these two girls. And I'm saying this now because it's significant in the story. So in Toronto, they live with him they live with the uncle and his son, I think his name is Jason, for about
Jacob.
4 years. Jacob, I'm sorry. So for about 4 years. But I think the interesting thing is, before we find out that our heroine is pregnant, we find out that our heroine, who grew up in a household with two men, and, oh, by the way, there's a little neighbor boy next door who's 18 who's quite fond of her, that she babysat. But we find out our 25-year-old heroine is charged with cutting her mother's grass. That's like one of her chores. At 25, she doesn't live at home anymore.
I don't want to call it a chore. Let's call it what it is, a duty.
But to me, a lot of this speaks to the dynamic between the mother, because I really want to set the stage for the mother because she's such a significant part of the story. And so we talked about her mom, setting her up on this date earlier in the book with Richard, who was doing an interview as opposed to a date, because he really wanted her to sell herself to him. He wasn't selling nothing, like, other than, I'm here, I'm a man, you should want me. And so we get to dinner, and we found out Mom, yet again, has injected a guy into the story. And it's someone that Azere already has a history with. And so once again, going back to what Lisa said, I will be the first person to say I have a significant issue with Azare's mother and her inserting herself into Azare's life. But even more so than that, I felt like it was a challenge for me because I felt like she took advantage of her daughter because she could. she took advantage of her daughter, and she manipulated her. So, and the discovery of the baby intensified that. Like, it did not make it better. She was never did she switch over to, I would call, a traditional maternal role. I think it opened the door for her to manipulate and hurt her daughter even more.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about Azere's mother. Now, we have this woman who came from her village. She was the wife of a farmer who took care of his family until he dies of cancer at 39. And then she and her daughters, like, the father knows they're going to Canada, which I think is even more intense in his decision to bind this child to this promise that she is going to be a good Nigerian daughter. And her sister is asleep. So the sister does not make the promise. And I was wondering what you guys thought of the fact that the mother does not seem to hold the younger sister to the same effort. And it's explained that, well, she was asleep when the father died, so he didn't ask her to make the promise. So I want to know, number one, what did you think of Azere's mother? I did not like that woman. I've met that woman. I know that woman. I was not mothered by that woman. All I'll say is that there is a woman in my life who is Azere's mother. I don't call her too often because she still scares me. So I want to know your thoughts about Azere's mother, your thoughts about her insistence about this child getting married and having children, even to the point where she says, Azere lies to him about the fact that you can make his favorite dish. So what did you think of Azere's mother, and what did you think? Because I think that we know some motivations. What do you think her mother's motivations were at the beginning of this story when you're first seeing it? Were they simple, or did they seem dangerous to you from the start?
For me, I have seen Azere's mother in real life. Like, I see mothers with the character traits that her mother had. And it was just as disappointing to read it in a book as it is to see it in real life. It was almost hurtful. Like, though I don't care for the decisions that Azere made in her life when it comes to her and Rafael's relationship, and I'll keep taking it back to them, but it really hurt me to see her in this weakened state. Like, her mother purposely does stuff to wound her when Azere doesn't do what her mother told her to do. I mean, basically, her mother tells her what to do, and if Azere does not do it, her mother will retaliate by saying things to wound her, and she will call her, she'll call her stupid or foolish. She calls her name. So I don't know if even at the end of the story, after reading this, though I can understand her mother's motivations. You want your child to be provided for and cared for. Her mother was married to a Nigerian man that even on his deathbed, he took steps to ensure that they were okay by sending them, his family, his wife and 2 young daughters, to his brother in Toronto. So I understood, the father. I understood the father's motivations. Do I understand everything that Azare's mom did to her in her attempt to provide security for her daughter? I do not. Because at no point in the story for me did Azare's mom acknowledge all that Azere had accomplished on her own. I mean, she is a professional woman. She's a college-educated woman. She lives on her own. She provides for herself. And at no time does her mother acknowledge what Azere has accomplished. It is all about what she hasn't done. And for the mom, that is, you have not gotten married and you have not given me grandchildren. So her motivations to me are relatively selfish.
So, Lisa, your thoughts on the first time you met Azare's mother?
Her mother annoyed me. Don't like when mothers try to force things on their daughters. I mean, that's just, to me, it's like you didn't live the life that you want me to live. Her mother, in fact, showed Azere how to be an independent woman. If you think about it, she went to nursing school after the father died. She became the provider for her household. They lived with the uncle for 4 years until she got her degree, and then they moved out into their own home. So she raised her daughters to be independent, even though she didn't know she was doing that. But then as soon as her daughter is educated and has a great job, all she wants is for her daughter to get married and depend on a man. It made no sense to me. I'm like, what are you doing? Yeah. Why do you want your daughter to go back in time?
Yeah.
It made absolutely no sense. And then the younger daughter, she got away with murder. She could do whatever, and it was fine.
Yeah, and there were some high points. There were some high points to the story. Like I love the interaction that Rafael and Azere had when they first meet at the bar. Like, I'm like, oh, he seems like a fun guy, especially after going out with that jerk Richard. Yeah, I don't know if I would have lasted as long as she did. I mean, she did end up bolting, thank goodness. But yeah, he was a piece of work. Thanks, Mom. Love you so much.
Yeah, let's
anyway.
talk about Rafael, because I really like that character.
Yes,
I liked him.
yes, and I love that. I love that when they first come back together at the job, and I don't want to give too much of the story away because I know we're talking about a lot of detail.
I know this is so hard because I'm like picking and choosing what to say.
Yeah, but I love that Azere also works with her best friend, and her best friend is absolutely hilarious. Christina, am I saying right, Michelle? Okay, Christina.
Yeah.
Okay, and she happens to be half adult and half Italian, and I had hoped that Christina and her family would play more of a significant role in the story, like that you would see Azere interact with them more, because you know, here you have Azere and Rafael who are attracted to each other from two different cultures, and then you have Christina, who's a blend of two different cultures, and is her best friend. And so for me, I felt like that was an opportunity that the author kind of missed. Like you see one scene where you have Azere and Christina's parents, and they talk about the blending of cultures. But to me, because you meet her best friend so early on in the story, seems like that could have been an evolution of her growing more in appreciating a blend of cultures without losing anything. So that one, I was like, like I felt like they came in late in the story for me. I was glad they were on the page, but I felt like they came in late in the story, considering she's known Christina for so long and her family.
So can we talk about the relationship that develops between Azere and Rafael? Because we meet them at the one-night stands, we meet them at the office, and then they actually decide to start going out again, even before she confirms her pregnancy, and then we find out she's pregnant. And Rafael is, of course, he's stunned, but at the same time, he's like, okay, I am all in. I like you, and I am happy that we're doing this. And so we're definitely given an opportunity to truly like him. And I wanted to point out something. You remember that first date when she's out with Richard, and she says, he pondered, eyes narrowed and darting, as if considering some vast complexity, and then his stare stilled on me, and he said, submissive. We talked about that. He says, at the utterance of that word, rage seized inside of me, and I preferred that my men weren't chauvinistic pricks, the brain and the table manners of a caveman. So this is her response to Richard on that first date. Then she goes out with Rafael for a date. For the first time, they have like a real date after like knowing each other, working with one another. and he takes her to this restaurant where there is dancing, and he asks her up on the floor, and